Howdy, y'all, and Happy New Year to ya. Welcome back to the Little Mermaid Retrospectives, the first season of Disney Retrospectives. These are a companion piece to the Disney Collection segment of the TAPAS podcast, in which I consume a vast amount of Disney-related media for the purpose of gathering inspiration for Keys and Kingdoms, a role-playing game and universe meant to feel like a combination of classic D&D high fantasy and a Disney film. Not sure why I say that every time. I'm assuming nobody's starting at part 6, but hey, you never know. I guess if you're listening to this, don't forget to check out the TAPAS and Stuff Productions podcast. It probably wasn't wise of me to have made the Disney collection just one segment in a podcast, but it's easy enough to skip past all the other segments and just listen to the Disney stuff. The podcast is definitely mostly about the Disney stuff these days. Hopefully it won't be long before the podcast is also back to being about, stuff we're actually creating. So, what are we doing? Season 2 of the Little Mermaid TV series, the middle part. Season 2, Episode 4 is called Against the Tide. I have no prior familiarity with this episode, but from this very short one-sentence synopsis and the preview image, it looks stupid. Let's see what we've got. We open on Ariel riding a giant seahorse. Made a decision not too long ago that K&K would not have giant seahorses, since it's breaking away from the D&D 5th edition mold, and not hippocampy either, because that word just means seahorses. Instead, the aquatic riding mounts in the K&K world will be called kelpies, and they will resemble some sort of biologically plausible combination of seahorses and, actual aquatic horses. Something new and cool for our merfolk to ride from a fantasy series from earlier in my life, which I'm combining with the overall game system scheme that will include Keys and Kingdoms as one of its internal franchises. So Sebastian is speaking to some castle staff about Triton returning from some meeting, getting ready to announce him. Those fish with the trumpet noses return from the movie. Those are stupid. Or are they? Big honky fish that make loud noises? Interesting merfolk designs among the castle staff. Are these characters supposed to be jesters and stuff? Back to Ariel. She's saying good morning to everyone in Atlantica. SpongeBob did something like that once. And, oh shit, is that who I think it is? Halfway through the series? Yes, indeed. Ursula makes her television debut here, played again by Pat Carroll. It does make sense, after all, since in the film, Ariel knows Ursula by reputation and is initially mistrustful of the idea of going to her for help, yeah? And oh shit, Ursula right away opens with a musical number. That's friggin' fantastic. It's a pretty weak song, but it gets the point across. Ursula's been having some bad luck with her potion brewing, and when she comes across the focus of the episode, a flippered and boar-tusked mammalian thing identified only as a bad luck creature. That's a horrible creature name. What mook came up with that? Give the species a real name. Even misfortune creature at least sounds kind of mystical. Anyway, Ursula suspects the creature is to blame for her ill luck lately, so she sets out to kill it in not so many words. This is a kid's show. Naturally, she has a lot of mishaps along the way. It is a bad luck creature after all. And her attack, kind of a fireball type thing, leaves the creature wounded among some kelp, where Ariel finds it. Ariel knows the legends. In addition to bad luck going on in its proximity, if she touches the creature, that's bad luck for the rest of her life. Her hesitation is only brief before she reaches out to comfort it, because she's Ariel and she doesn't think things through. What if it had been true? I'd have researched the legends a little bit myself there, girl. Ariel carries the cooing bad luck creature back to Atlantica, evading the menacingly searching Ursula as she does so. Her success at hiding from Ursula inside a giant flower thing convinces Ariel that the bad luck creature is, well, not that. And then, what appears to be a basking shark approaches, only instead of filter feeding, it's chomping down on these giant flower thingies, swallowing them whole. That's weird and strangely creepy, even if you're not hiding inside a giant flower thingy. Yeah, very eerie, just this big, toothless, big-nosed shark just chomping down on these flowers. It's something spooky about it, I don't know. But Ariel and the creature escape. Ariel tends to the creature's injuries before reaching Atlantica and decides to name it Lucky. Sebastian is instantly freaked at the sight of the creature, and his panic causes him to ruin the catering he'd set out. Its very presence, and Ariel having touched it, yeah, I mean, that's a pretty darn bad thing if you believe in the legend, wouldn't you say? Back at her lair, Ursula sends Flotsam and Jetsam out to hunt the creature down. She very much wants it gone. Flounder and Sebastian help Ariel tend to Lucky, and they're very cautious, which hurts the creature's feelings. They eventually succeed at cheering him up, making him laugh, and that creaturey laughter, that's gotta be Frank Welker playing Lucky, right? I don't know, I've thought that before, and he's never showed up in the credits. In this show, at least. King Triton returns home, and Ariel decides to cut to the chase and instantly fess up about harboring a bad luck creature. No small talk, no drama. Hey, that's pretty refreshing. Triton's response is one that, seems rather familiar. He doesn't believe the creature spreads bad luck, but he knows that the superstition surrounding it causes fear and tension. Makes me think of, I guess, an old West sheriff, very politely asking a perfectly nice guy that the townspeople are scared of to get out of Dodge for his own safety and for the peace of the community. Triton even points out, that to Sebastian, that there's nothing at all unusual about the mishaps he's been suffering, but Arista, of all people, stirs up an angry mob desiring to drive Lucky away. They're interrupted when Ursula marches right into Atlantica with the aim of taking the creature out. Color me impressed. I always assumed her to be more cautious than that. Ursula's magic summons some poison ink, with which she threatens Triton if he doesn't turn over the creature. She even sings a little reprise of her song while doing all sorts of magic. Say, fun fact, in early iterations of the film, Ursula was the sister of King Triton. This didn't make it into the film and wouldn't really make any sense as they're different species, but apparently the Broadway version runs with it. Can't say I know how. There's not much that a relationship like that can add to the story except to be a reason for the oblique mention that Ursula used to live in the palace. I always assumed she was some sort of advisor or court magician or what have you. Anyway, during the song, Sebastian sneakily sculpts a copy of Lucky out of pate, and Ursula just offhandedly incinerates it and departs. No, that was easy. Lucky is very grateful to Sebastian, and then, rather randomly, Lucky collapses to the ground and gives birth. 5? No, 7. No, 10 tiny bad luck creatures are born, and they're delightful. Triton encourages the mother to stay. Atlantica is a wonderful place to raise children, so he says. And the episode ends. Wow, that felt like it went by very quickly. Guess we have to hope that the angry mobs are driven off, or that the superstitions are disproven, and that nobody seeks to harm the babies. Somehow I don't think people work that way. Lucky's attitude gave me the impression that, she's been alone and unloved for some time, but clearly she must have mated with somebody just a few months ago if she was pregnant for the whole episode. Or perhaps not. While she looks mammalian, one can't overlook the fact that she can breathe underwater, plus there must be something shifty about her species if even people as learned as Ursula believe them to be bad luck creatures, so clearly there's some wonky biological stuff going on. If she can breathe underwater, hey, why not asexual reproduction? Credits for our guest stars. Pat Carroll is Ursula, like I said. Mary Kay Bergman is Arista. Gosh, we're halfway through the series, and Arista is the only one of the sisters to have really been a real character in this show, apart from whichever one hangs out with Pearl, and whichever one was the chubby one, who almost had some characterization. I wonder if all 6 of them really do get characterized in the series, as I've always assumed they do. Patty Edwards returns as Flotsam and Jetsam. Okay, I wasn't sure. Their voices sounded different. I guess the show didn't have access to whatever really good audio processing the film used to create Flotsam and Jetsam's voices, because their voices are very badly processed here in the show. Here I thought Patty Edwards was just able to sound like that. And indeed, Frank Welker is Lucky, confirmed. Yay! Our next episode is called Giggles, and I've seen this episode a million times. It was on this Disney Princess DVD my little sisters used to have. See, first they had Ariel introducing this episode, then they had Cinderella narrating a condensed version of her movie, and then Jasmine introducing a Jasmine-heavy episode of the Aladdin TV series. So yeah, I know this episode very well. Guess I have to watch it anyway. It starts with Sebastian giving Ariel a lecture about famous crabs in history, but Ariel can't stop herself from giggling at the silly names like Professor Buster Krusty Doodle. Sebastian wishes Ariel would take things a little more seriously, but in spite of himself, he can't resist tagging along when Ariel offers him a game of hide and seek. Flounder's not crazy about it, and Ariel knows it's for young people, but it's Sebastian's favorite for whatever reason. And here we meet this week's antagonist. His name is never given, but his species, we learn later, is Sorcerer Blowfish. Various aspects of this character and his people are definitely worth considering for K&K. I kind of try to make that a habit. If a creature appears in a Disney property I watch, something inspired by that creature goes into the K&K universe, even if it's lame, like the bad luck creature. The Sorcerer Blowfish is certainly not lame. In his design, he's a blue and orange fish resembling a harlequin, though I guess he's supposed to look like a warlock. And he's got some other interesting designs and patterns on his body and scales. Jim Cummings plays him, and he's very posh with a deep, dark voice. When my sisters watched that DVD, my mom wondered if the blowfish was voiced by Alan Rickman. He and his people speak in rhyme, always an interesting trait to give to a mystical creature, and they cast spells by blowing magical energy out of their mouths in the form of streams of bubbles, hence blowfish, even though they don't look very much like actual blowfish. He's grumbling, in verse, about how much he hates cheerfulness and laughter, so when he comes upon our main trio's hide-and-seek game, it doesn't help his bad mood. Doesn't really get him what he's looking for. Ariel soon has such a massive fit of giggles about Sebastian's haplessness that the Sorcerer Blowfish decides arbitrarily to punish her for his own bad mood. He puts a spell on her that causes earthquakes every time she laughs, as she soon discovers, and he's sure to let her know that the quakes also happen if she tells anybody about the curse. With that ominous pronouncement, he teleports away. Moments later, seeing Sebastian and Flounder getting into more shenanigans, Ariel stifles her laughter and swims away, to her friend's concern. A week later, Sebastian and Flounder are expressing their concern to King Triton about how unhappy Ariel has been. Ariel is summoned to see them, and they take note of how she's actively suppressing any smiles or laughs she may have. She claims she's just trying to follow Sebastian's lead and take life more seriously, to Sebastian's despair. Triton sends Flounder and Sebastian out to try to cheer her up. They find her moping around in her bed, and Sebastian, after telling her seriousness has its place, not a thing you have to do all the time, he sings her a nice calypso song about, just reminds her of, how she used to have fun and laugh. One of the best songs in the series for sure. Nowhere on the caliber of the movie, but it's pretty good. That's probably why this episode got that DVD release. The cheerful nature of the song finally breaks Ariel down, and she unleashes all her pent-up laughter, causing a horrible quake right there in the palace, doing all sorts of structural damage to Atlantica. Knowing she can't risk that again, Ariel swims off into the wilderness, running away to live as a hermit. Very quickly unsatisfied with this idea, she decides to try to find the fish that did this to her. Sebastian and Flounder watch, but can't quite hear, as she's seen asking various aquatic denizens where she might find these magical blowfish. Finally, a giant squid with a weirdly human face knows what she's looking for, and Sebastian and Flounder hear the old squid give Ariel directions to a place called Oblo Cadablo. Sebastian knows the name of the place and now realizes that, for whatever reason, Ariel is looking for Sorcerer Blowfish. As Ariel enters the Mystic Lands with her two friends secretly on her trail, a duo of Sorcerer Blowfish, played by Clive Revel and Kath Soucie, start messing with Sebastian and Flounder, first turning them one by one into progressively scarier creatures. I've taken note of this in my Disney collection before. In a lot of media aimed at kids, being a wizard or a sorcerer often means that you have the ability to turn people or animals into other animals, and that's it. That's literally all they can do. It's most of what Merlin does in The Sword and the Stone, where wizard duels explicitly consist entirely of changing into animal forms. It seems to be the only power possessed by Murloc in the DuckTales movie, and here in this episode, Sorcerer Blowfish magic consists almost entirely of animal transformations. If it wasn't for the giggly curse placed on Ariel, that would be the only thing Sorcerer Blowfish are confirmed capable of doing. I find that an odd trend. And do you think kids can't understand any other form of magic? The duo finish their assault on Sebastian and Flounder by restoring them to their normal bodies, or rather, each other's bodies. Naturally, this means their voices swap along with their minds, so, Sebastian looks like Flounder, but he still sounds like Sebastian, which is a shame. I would have liked to hear Samuel E. Wright and Eden Gross doing impressions of each other. Based on their past performances in this show, I think they'd have been excellent at it. As it is, compliments here actually go to the animators, who do a surprisingly excellent job of giving the characters each other's body language and facial expressions. A rather impressive feat, considering most television animation is done by overseas laborers rather than artists with particular investment in the project. Meanwhile, Ariel's found the blowfish who cursed her. She chews him out for ruining her life, and to incentivize him, she starts cackling horribly, causing his own home to erupt in earthquakes. This successfully breaks him, and he removes the curse, bitter at his defeat. Ariel questions why he even wanted to defeat some random stranger who likes to have fun, and he confesses, in rhyming verses, which Ariel kind of has to think about in order to translate, which is a nice touch. He finds himself inadequate. The other blowfish of Oblocadablo are such powerful magicians that he always feels like a fool, so I guess he was out in Atlantica hoping to find someone he could make a fool of. The body-swapped Sebastian and Flounder manage to find Ariel, and she persuades her new blowfish companion to switch them back, then joins them in laughing in relief, much to their delight. But soon, our heroes are confronted with the two blowfish who were messing with Ariel's friends earlier. Our heroes are imprisoned to be slave labor in the bubble mines, and so too is their blowfish companion, as apparently in Oblocadablo it's illegal to remove a curse that a fellow sorcerer blowfish put on someone. Sometime later, our heroes are indeed mining bubbles. There are bubbles inside the walls of underground tunnels, and they chip them out with a chisel and cart them out in a wheelbarrow. Bubble mines, like, what? Anyway, Ariel turns to their fellow prisoner and observes something about the difference between him and the other blowfish he finds himself so inferior to. The other blowfish are always in a good mood, laughing at the results of their magic. So, our hero blowfish realizes, if he was happier, that might enhance his magic. So they try something. The blowfish turns the four of them into a mine snake, a very scary, huge green sea serpent, and they bust out of the mine in that form. The other two blowfish try to defend themselves, stating their intention is to turn the snake into a small worm, because again, that's all sorcerers and kids' shows can do, but the snake proves impervious to their magic, so they flee. The blowfish turns them all back into themselves and laughs uproariously along with them, admitting that, well, it feels good to feel good. So, gosh, despite having seen this episode so many times, I guess now that I have the entire rest of the series to compare it to, I have to say this was a shockingly good episode. The emotion felt by Ariel and her loved ones due to her inability to laugh is portrayed brilliantly, and the musical number is, actually memorable, which I guess I didn't realize before was kind of a rarity in this show. So, thumbs up. I can see why this episode got the DVD release treatment. The corresponding Aladdin episode was also a really good one, which a lot of people remember, so whoever put that shitty DVD together knew what they were doing. They picked the good ones. And we close up today with Season 2, Episode 6, Wish Upon a Starfish. Ooh, this episode introduces a character who, I have seen in an episode when I was a kid, but I didn't really notice what she was all about, so when I learned about her later from doing some light internet reading about the franchise, I was intrigued. So, I'm excited to meet her. We open in some house by the sea during an awful storm. The storm and the waves sweep a tiny ballerina figurine out of the house and into the sea. Meanwhile, Ariel and Flounder are in her grotto, having built up a pretty good collection of human stuff at this point. When Sebastian discovers them, wrong. When Sebastian enters the grotto in the film, that's pretty clearly the first time he's ever seen it. Ariel is beginning to fantasize about living up there. And when she learns it's stormy out, she's excited because storms, well, they produce a lot of human junk that she can collect. She sees the ballerina figurine, and she wants. She gets a hold of it just before the three of them are slammed by a wave. The trio come to consciousness washed up on a beach. Quickly, Ariel returns Flounder to the water and plays with the figurine, which turns out to also be a music box. The ballerina spins and a little song plays. Ariel wants to learn to do human dances just like her. They hear piano playing coming from the nearby house, and Ariel begs Sebastian to peek in the window for her. And he, unfortunately, gets trapped inside the house when a couple of blokes board up the window that shattered in the storm. He evades the family cat. Cat versus crab. How would that go in D&D? In K&K, the cat would have an edge. Well, depends on how big a crab, I guess. And he finds himself inside the piano. Apparently the man of the house plays it, and the little ballerina depicted by the music box, in fact, lives there. She's been practicing her ballet, and she gets so enthusiastic that she dances her way all the way out into the docks where Ariel can see her. Ariel longs to dance like that, but human dancing requires two tails, as she says, and she's unreasonably depressed at this realization. So we're about halfway through the episode, and in hindsight, yeah, that whole first half, all filler. Back in her grotto, Ariel sings a little something, kind of a proto-part of your world, I guess, chronologically speaking. And as she sings, it's not an especially good song, but at least lets Jodie Benson sing it powerfully. She's watched by our character of the hour, a pink-clad mermaid by the name of Gabriella, and her octopus companion. They encourage Ariel to keep singing. Gabriella likes to watch her sing. That's right, watch. You see, Gabriella is deaf and mute. She reads lips and speaks in sign language, which her octopus friend speaks aloud on her behalf. Visually, Gabriella also appears to be of a Latino persuasion. As I understand it, she's based on a little girl who was a big fan of The Little Mermaid, and Disney kind of wrote her in, maybe as part of one of those non-profits that allows sick kids to make wishes. I don't know the story precisely. I think it's something like that. Let's see. Disney Wiki. Yikes. Apparently the real Gabriella died while the first season of the show was still airing, so she never got to see her wish come true, if in fact she did make a wish. Sad. Gabriella's translator octopus is named Ollie, and he's voiced by Whit Hertford, who appeared in the first season of the show playing the magically de-aged King Triton. Hertford is best known for his appearance in the first Jurassic Park film, playing the little kid at the beginning who doesn't think velociraptors are so scary. He's never found huge success as an actor since hitting adulthood, but he pops up in film and television every now and then. Could be doing a lot worse. In response to fan theories that Chris Pratt's character in Jurassic World is Hertford's character all grown up, Hertford stated that, well, he certainly didn't grow up to look like Chris Pratt. Hey, don't beat yourself up, Whit. Chris Pratt didn't grow up to look like Chris Pratt either. He was a pretty schlubby guy before he randomly started playing action heroes and got into shape for it. Gabriella introduces Ollie, who speaks for himself only very occasionally. When Gabriella speaks sign language, Ollie translates in the first person, speaking as though he is Gabriella. Why a mermaid living off the coast of Denmark knows American Sign Language? Well, ASL's been around for a while, since before the setting of The Little Mermaid, and it is descended from earlier forms of French Sign Language, and besides which, every other character in this show speaks American English, so, fuck it. The choice of an octopus to be Gabriella's companion, well, I'm sure they didn't mean anything by it, but the octopus is a very popular choice for an underwater creature, right up there with fish and crabs, but it got my gears turning. Octopuses, and yes, that's an equally legitimate and less stupid-sounding plural than octopi. I prefer octopodes myself, but the world isn't ready for that. Anyway, do you know how smart octopuses are? They've got some of the best and most complex brains in the world, despite being on the same phylogenetic tree that gives us snails and clams, and despite not living very long. They also tend to be rather malicious and devious, Some are known to memorize the routes of the security guards at their aquarium, so they know exactly when to escape their tank to get into the other tank and eat some fish in there. One story tells of an octopus who, upon being fed, escaped its tank, oozed its way into the zookeeper's office, and slapped the food onto the man's desk, proving that the octopus could have escaped at any time it wanted and decided that the time to reveal it to the humans was now, for no other reason but to express indignation at the food being inadequate. There's a story making the rounds right now that's kind of becoming a meme in which scientists are observing attempts by octopuses to team up with fish for hunting expeditions, only to tend to get very frustrated with their fish companions and punch them. My point being, in K&K, an octopus being a service animal for a disabled merfolk sounds like an absolutely brilliant idea. I don't know about interpreting for a merfolk who can't talk, but, well, maybe. My initial idea for merfolk in K&K was that they could communicate with fish. Fish gives you a lot of options, but I decided that restricted things a bit too much. It would leave out Sebastian, for one thing. So I decided, forgive me if I've mentioned this already, that merfolk can communicate at a base level with any animal that can breathe underwater and can converse fluently with whales and dolphins. So maybe an octopus sign language interpreter isn't entirely out of the question. Either way, octopuses being service animals under the sea, that's totally got to be a thing, for various other merfolk disabilities. Gabriella wonders about Ariel's human treasures and finds them rather fascinating herself. And Gabriella knows of a secret, a place Ariel can go to get those 2 tails she needs to dance a human dance. A giant magical wishing starfish in Starfish Grotto who can grant your fondest wishes. It's a long and perilous journey, but it's where Gabriella is going, with the intent of wishing for hearing and a voice so that she can be a singer. And I'd be willing to bet that story comes from the real Gabriella. Imagine being a deaf child and being a huge fan of Ariel, a character known for her singing. I can totally see, watching the passionate animation that goes into Ariel's singing and wishing to God that you could hear that you could do that. So Ariel, Sebastian, and Flounder join Gabriella and Ollie on their quest. As they travel, Sebastian relates the story of when Ariel met Spot. Why isn't that episode on Disney Plus? Disney! They certainly call back to it often enough. Meanwhile, Gabriella teaches Ariel a few signs. Nothing terribly useful, just wildlife and stuff. In a canyon, they pass a giant eel. Ooh, giant eels. I was compiling a list of animals for K&K once, and I asked myself, why didn't I include any giant eels? Giant eels are awesome. No need for just regular eels. And they enter the Cave of Terror, a cave shaped like a massive sea turtle. Sebastian initially refuses to enter, but decides he'd rather go with them than wait in this canyon all alone. They face a giant snapping turtle, and on the other side of the Cave of Terror, there's a land of killer crabs, the magic starfish waiting just beyond. Gabriella swims ahead eagerly and is unable to hear one of the killer crabs sneaking up on her or Ariel's shouts of warning, and soon the 2 mermaids are wrapped in seaweed and held in a web? A web, really? Sebastian starts talking to the killer crabs. They don't seem to be verbal themselves, but his endless chattering confuses them enough that he easily frees the mermaids from the web. Sure, because giant killer crabs spin webs. Right, everybody knows that. And soon they find the giant starfish, who stands atop a massive coral throne, and he's voiced by, is that Tony J? Aw, man, I love Tony J. They're just, oh man, the world lost one hell of a deep voice when he passed away. No actor ever had more majesty. I thought I heard him as one of the guys boarding up the window earlier, but I didn't dare to believe it. So the starfish, he's massive. He stands erect, and I'd say about 25 feet tall. And he has a crown and a beard that give him a distinct resemblance to King Triton. Also a cape. Do I have to come up with a giant starfish creature now? It'll have to be real frickin' scary, I'll tell you that much. Starfish, they're truly grotesque and horrifying, If they were huge, my God. Gabriella and Ariel make their wishes, and the starfish spins and spins over them, but nothing happens. The starfish admits that he can't actually do magic. Much as he enjoys the rumors about himself, he cannot actually grant wishes. The 2 mermaids lament not getting to express themselves through song and dance, but, well, they have what they have. Ariel sings a reprise of her song, and Gabriella signs along with her, as, well, they dance like mermaids instead of like humans. And the episode ends pretty much just like that. It's a beautiful resolution. I have to admit I'm not an expert, but it seems like pretty good deaf representation. She's a very spunky and clever character who initially sees it as a disability to overcome, but decides she may not need to. That's a decent message, and hey, Gabriella's very existence proves that The Little Mermaid does have deaf fans, so good job, I say. Gosh, I haven't seen a deaf character in much of any kind of story. They're not just a group of disabled people, they're kind of a minority group as well, since they have a language and so, to a certain degree, a culture. So, I'm very, very glad the crew of this show learned about young Gabriella and wrote her into the show. It's a pretty cool and beautiful thing. You don't see that too often. You don't see the love going into small television projects like this. Our end credits, okay, we got Jodie Benson, Samuel E. Wright, Eden Gross, and this appears to be the first episode of the show in which King Triton doesn't appear, unless I'm recalling incorrectly. And he's definitely not in this episode, but I'm pretty sure he's been in every one until now. Whit Hertford and Tony Jay are guest stars, as I thought, and the episode also lists Jim Cummings and Hal Rail as guest stars, but I don't think there were any other characters in this episode. Did the two of them just do the mumbling for the killer crabs? Who knows? So this was a most satisfying trio of episodes. I'm not crazy about the bad luck creature, but it was amazing to see Ursula, amazing to meet Gabriella, and Giggles was so much better than I remember. Really good stuff. And hey, all 3 episodes I watched today had songs in them. I remember being kind of disappointed when I learned that not every episode has a song. And the songs here were quite good, and they were all sung twice. Neato. Now that this is over, I no longer have to come up with a new phrasing about the bit reminding you about Patreon because I have an actual Patreon bumper now. So, before the bumper, thanks Sadie Allen for being the company's first $20 patron. I'd also like to thank her for being, well, probably not the only person who listens to these retrospectives, but certainly the only person who's willing to admit it. Thanks, lass. And now, here comes the thing. TAPAS and Stuff Productions is brought to you by our supporters on Patreon, including Knight Sadie Allen.